the 2nd day of May 2024. Welcome to the show. Tonight I'm Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclear proctologist.org, and you can call in at 709-589-4406. We got a massive showing tonight. One person, one thumbs up. We got 2 votes. I think that's a win. Nobody else probably does, but so we got a poll. Should nuclear power plants be renamed massive disease factories and death atoms extermination machines? You know, one or the other, or both of them. I think they're self-explanatory. So Ignace here in Canada and Ontario had a vote of 5 days. Even children were allowed to vote on putting a nuclear dump in their community. It's really something. South Korea is rapidly increasing due to the weakening yen. So people are going for the cheap liquor, and they get a lethal doses of radiation that catches up to them down the road. And if they're buying a lot of it, you got massive bioaccumulation. Sake was mainly favored by the middle-aged and elderly, but the base is expanding to the younger victims. It's really something. They know no shame, no common sense. The industry is just gobblish. You don't understand what I'm talking about is, Japan is a big producer of rice. You probably didn't realize that. The Asians like rice. And they got a lot of radioactive rice because of multiple nuclear meltdowns and fuel pools that have detonated. Things we've never seen before, by the way. And the food was banned by 55 countries for a decade. But they used to take the rice they couldn't sell and mix it with rice from other prefectures and resell it. Last year, South Korea scumbag imported 4,300 tons, which is 10,888,000 pounds, which is a million gallons. So it's a significant amount. 1 million gallons is actually, it's enough to poison 1 million people a couple times over. Over 2,700 residents moved out of 4 municipalities hit by the Noto Quake, Ishikawa Prefecture, on January the 1st. We covered it extensively because of the Shika nuclear power plant. We still have no footage of the Shika community, let alone the nuclear power plant. But this story that just showed up today does mention Shika. 272 people from the town of Shika has now moved off the Noto Peninsula. And we know Shika was hit by a 7 out of a 7 on Japan's seismic intensity scale of 7/7 out of 7. And it looks like, because that plant was shut down, but there was fuel pools at the top of the buildings. Now they admit that the building swayed so much that there was water sloshing out of the pool. And you got to realize the pools are nowhere near the top. They're not like swimming pools. So for water to slosh out of them, there had to be infrastructure damage, first off. And the coastline for 85 kilometers, including right in front of Shika nuclear plant, was lifted up 13 feet in the air. We still got no footage of that stuff. 6 ports were completely dried out because the earth rose up 13 feet or more. It was 52 or something ports were severely damaged. They actually had a tsunami because the earth rose up so high, it mitigated a lot of the damage. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Success of the Amazon Prime Fallout series prompts Amazon to develop its own nuclear weapons. Somebody got a nuclear bomb with Amazon written on it. Amazon has reportedly begun production of its own line of nuclear weapons following the success of its Fallout series. Now, as far as I know, it's just one season and it's 8 episodes. And I don't really want to give it away in case you watch it. But I really should do a couple of presentations on it. And I probably will in the near future. I'm going to have to watch it again. So they're still pretty darn low. The nuclear industry obviously has its claws in there pretty deep. And we know that Amazon is pro-nuclear, right? We have a culture that allows the best ideas to rise to the top. The head of Amazon new nuclear division. So many people are excitingly replaying the Fallout games. I think there's like 8 of these Fallout games because of their new show that just got released. And we figured we could use the hype and the show viewers how close we could get to a Fallout wasteland in real life. So we made some headways in developing an actual Fat Man, which we have a growing wait list of Prime, which is the bomb they dropped in Japan. A growing wait list of Prime members who have pre-ordered Amazon's new tactical nuclear catapult. And many Prime members say they're eagerly awaiting the new line of Amazon basic weapons so they can finally live out their dreams of traversing the radioactive wastelands of America. Well, you don't have to wait for Prime. That's been going on for almost 80 years now. You nuked yourself with your own nuclear weapons. Yeah, and then you, like the craziness, they call it testing for some reason. Nuclear weapon is a nuclear weapon. If a terrorist brings a nuclear weapon in your country and detonates it in the desert, that's still a terrorist attack, right? But if the government does it, and spectacularly so, it's called testing. Interesting. He said, I'm so excited, said a useful idiot. I've been playing Fallout since the Fallout 3 came out. I always loved that you could get a weapon that would level an entire town full of people. Now I can try it out in real life. This is a video game they're talking about, by the way. While I wait for my new Fat Man nuke launcher, I'll be wearing my Vault 33 Vault suit. You can get them on Prime now for $36. If you really want to be a dork, that's definitely the way to go. And collecting all the bottle caps I can, said Prime member Vault Boy 101. Real puke stuff in it. Vault 33 Vault suits. And sure enough, it was on Prime. And you can get some pretty expensive versions of that. Discovery of uranium-contaminated soil purification material without secondary environmental pollution. Uranium. Like uranium creates $1,000. And so, yeah, if you can reclaim uranium, that's pretty cool. But what about the other $1,000? It's an essential for nuclear power generation, serious implications for both soil ecosystems and human health. And despite being a key radioactive material, uranium poses significant health risk due to its chemical toxicity to the kidneys, the bones, and the cells, your body, your organs. And as a result, both the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which we have no evidence they've ever protected anything, and the Degenerate World Health Organization recommend advocating for uranium concentrations in wastewater to be below 30 micrograms, I guess, is it? So when you do the conversion, it's 0.03 micrograms per liter. Now, you shouldn't measure radiation in micrograms. You should measure it in physical atoms, right? physical atoms. Do they matter? The Korean Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technologies has conducted research on a nanomaterial-based absorption process to efficiently remove uranium wastewater extracted from actual radioactive contaminated soil. So, if you got uranium wastewater, it's not going to be just contaminated with uranium. And all these isotopes are the same size. And so when they start telling you that they can remove uranium, and they don't talk about that it's also going to remove the other isotopes, then it's best to disregard them. They're probably just looking for investors. Another nuclear scam. And there's how many of them out there? 300,000 or something? Well, there's 1 million companies dependent upon the nuclear scumbag industry. Radioactive wastewater, inevitable byproduct of the nuclear energy generation. This is not this is a byproduct. Nuclear energy is a byproduct of the weapons production. Requires post-treatment to minimize ecological impact and associated risk. Like, what are they talking about? They couldn't care less. I mean, all the nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. Why are all the nuclear power plants surrounded by farms, right? Well, because that's the quickest way to poison you and your loved ones. Like, it's truly the one of the darkest industries you're ever going to hear tell of. I don't understand how they can look anybody in the face and then claim that they have some attributes that are redeeming. How does that actually work? For uranium contaminated soil, like, what are you talking about? You can't have just uranium contaminated soil. It's like saying, so when you look at these studies, for instance, what do you see? You very rarely see the word uranium. CC-134 in potatoes. And you know the potatoes, you know everything is going to suck up the radiation, which makes you wonder, why the hell are they surrounded by farms? Why is nuclear power plants surrounded by farms when they know the root of plants and trees and the meadow ecosystem suck up radiation? So why are all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms? What's up? What's up, dog? Health physicists in the United States worried about inhaling hot particles from Fukushima, uranium, plutonium, etc., 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 etc. 16,000 workers quit. These were the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. This plume was a xenon-133 at 1 million atoms per square meter. This plume was iodine-133 at 20 million atoms per square meter. This plume was 220 million atoms of iodine-129 per square meter with a 50 million year half-life. And how many of these plume models do we have that are uranium? I don't think we have a single one, do we? But we have endless models and studies showing all the other isotopes. Well, why are nuclear power plants surrounded by farms? And if that doesn't terrify you, then you're probably new, I guess. Thyroid cancer risk lasts the entire life after radiation exposure. So if you're eating food, the risk lasts your entire life. They love fresh water, they love salt water, they love killing it. That's what they love about it. Yeah, the stupid gets even worse. Everything about nuclear just, what the hell are you? Why don't you people stop being mass genocide machines for a couple of years and give the planet a chance to recover from your 80 years of emissions? Is that a novel idea? Should all of Canada have a referendum on the nuclear waste the Nuclear Management Organization, an Ontario farm town will vote in October on whether they to become Canada's largest nuclear dump. Look at the farm field. So how can you have a little community making a decision that affects the entire country? How does that actually work? Like, really, how does that work? Ontario farm community. Because that's, like I just showed you, that's what they love: nuclear dumps, nuclear waste sites, and farmlands. It's really important to them. It's the quickest way to destroy your communities and your social bonds, the nuclear families, and that. Make everybody sick, and then nobody can complain, right? And why would you trust a historical online vote? Why would you trust an online vote with something so pertinent, so important? In a community where everybody can show up and put a paper vote in, right? Why would you do it online? So you can skewer the results? That will decide whether their quiet rural town will be transformed to a disease factory. That will give Canada a permanent tomb for millions of bundles. There's 5.5 million bundles currently, but I expect another 5.5 million by the time they finish, for millions of bundles of used highly radioactive. And again, it's always very misleading because it's splitting atoms. So you're going to spend 130 years bringing fuel that's splitting atoms into a farming community and then repackaging it at the surface. Everything, for instance, I whipped is vented from the Los Alamos National Laboratory, for instance. So does people really think that they're not going to be doing the exact same thing for the Canadian nuclear dump, wherever they put it? With are they going to have fancy vault suits too for that, I wonder? Bear with me a second here now. Multi-billion-dollar project give Canadian permanent tomb for millions of bundles of highly radioactive nuclear fuel. Because it's splitting atoms. That's the problem with it. That's why it's not because it's really toxic. It's very dangerous to be in proximity to it. But the big problem is everything is vented. Oh yeah, that's what we're looking for. Hang on. Let me bring up some evidence because that doesn't matter anymore. But I like to do it just because I'm a weirdo. Let's see what the old nuclear rabbit hat has here in a second. Let's let it chug its way through. Oh, crap. La la la, we're getting there. The problem is I got so much, so it'll take me a second to scan. Oh, luck would have it. A lot of these clips this is 2014, right? So a lot of those older clips I haven't reformatted. Because they're like old formats. They might not work on the new systems. All right, let's play that. I gotta slurp some tea before it goes cold on me. Let's put it on the big screen. I'm going to adjust the volume for you in real time, so bear with me. I might have to restart it if it's I'm not sure if this is a short, yeah. So they're talking, and this is a seated audience, and the question is a seated question, because there's no reason to ask the question the way they did. Whoever done it is very knowledgeable, but try to come across as not knowledgeable.
are you still getting such waste that's not vented? And that could be a problem.
Okay, so that's a great question. So let me answer it more generally. There are no containers at WIP that are unvented. There is a requirement that all containers that come to WIP have to be vented. And that's not just a requirement for us to receive, it's also a requirement for the licenses that control the true packs that all this waste is shipped in. The containers have to be vented. We have to do headspace gas analysis on all the containers to verify any generation rates and that they have to be below certain levels. And so the answer to your question is no, we don't have any containers that are coming. We don't have any that we've received and none that are coming that won't be vented.
So does anybody really think the Canadian fuel transfers will be different? Do they really think it's different anywhere else? I haven't got a single scrap of evidence of a nuclear dump site where it's not vented. It's vented all the way there. It's repackaged. Everything is vented. The problem that's vented is because it's still splitting atoms. And it's splitting so many atoms. You should be terrified of the prospect that is going to come through your communities, up your highways. So everything on both sides of those highways for 50 to 100 miles is going to be polluted because of the longevity of this operation and the enormous inventories we're talking about, and the fact that you're talking about fuel rods that are splitting atoms. So you can't open, like if you're going to ship fuel rods there, for instance, that are splitting atoms, you can't introduce oxygen in there once it gets there to repackage it. So it has to be vented, because if you do, it'll detonate, right? And so what it means, though, is that they're just, I got a story here where he says, well, if we have an accident, it can be easily cleaned up, put back in, we can get on our way again right away. Unlike a gas or an oil spill or something like that on the road where you got to dig up all the topsoil and all kinds of stuff. These are scumbags. It's an industry with $26 billion and it still hasn't built anything. $26 billion for 18 years, and all they've done is blew the interest on themselves and their children and everybody else in their families. Used highly radioactive nuclear fuel. If the voters say yes to burying tens of thousands of tons of used CANDU reactor disease factory fuels deep below the community, the town will get hundreds of high-paying jobs. And they'll need that money because of heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, from the massive diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies over the next decades that will start to manifest. 138 years. And if no, they get to walk away with $8 million. So if they're smart, they're going to walk away with $8 million. See, there's a big incentive because they've been throwing money around. How much money does $26 million make a year on interest? And after 18 years, they still haven't come up with a solution. Isn't it time to fire every one of these people? Isn't it time to create a new organization that doesn't have nothing to do with the industry? The industry doesn't want a solution because you can't come up with a solution because everything has to be vented all the time because everything's still splitting atoms for 1 million years. That's why nowhere on the planet, like what they're talking about doing in Finland, just because they dug a hole in the ground, that don't mean it's the best solution. It's going to melt down at some point in the near future because it doesn't need oxygen. It'll melt down. $418 million in subsidies from Canada nuclear industry over the course of a 138-year project. Basically, $3 million a year to the community. A lot of money for a community in the middle of nowhere. That if they reinvented themselves, they can make a lot more, and that with just tourists. It's a beautiful area. It's incredible. And then it's all farmland, for goodness sakes. And that's the only reason they want to go to these places, because the farmland. There's no other reason. Because the farms then are exporting all the radiation from the emissions into the communities. There's obviously an agenda to poison everybody worldwide. And the harmfulness to the children is shocking. And to the water, like all their water is going to be completely radioactive in a short time. For the town, October vote is the accumulation of a 12-year debate. 12 years. 12 years. 12 years with $26 billion. 12 years. 12 years with $26 billion. And then a 5-day vote where they let children vote. Children. Vote on something that's the most important thing in human history. They let children vote on it in a community, and they disregard the rest of the country who's going to be affected by that radioactive fallout. And the communities that it's going to go through. 12 years with $26 billion, you haven't come up with a solution yet. You got any idea how stupid that actually is? You gave them $26 billion, and all they do is divide your communities. $26 billion, and the interest on that every year, their $26 billion never grew. If you got $26 billion, you got reliable investments, you could have quadrupled that every couple of years, right? Why is it still at $26 billion? Because they're just stealing the interest, which is who knows how much a year. I don't know how much that is. 1.7 million, a billion a year or something maybe? Because you know they're investing it. It's just a big party, and they want the farmland. They buy, just speculation, they bought up 1,500 acres. That has left deep ruptures in the community to those who see welcoming radioactive waste as a new kind of prosperity, and those who see it as nothing but a potential danger. It's not a potential danger, it's a danger. Why use that word when it's actually a danger? Everything is vented. Nothing is... You can't contain it because then you can't repackage it. Because it'll detonate when you introduce oxygen. Except when it comes to storing nuclear waste, there's a broad scientific consensus. The kind of nuclear dump officials have proposed in South Bruce is the best possible solution to the tricky problem of what to do with the radioactive waste. Oh, we're going to dig a big hole in the ground, and we're going to put it down there, and we're going to run away. And at some point, it's going to eat through the container through the Wigner effect. The neutron bombardment is going to break down that container. And when it burns at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperature, so it's going to catch everything else in that caverns on fire. And they're going to burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And that's just going to consume everything. And eventually, water or fresh air will get in there and it'll detonate. Because water expands, right? A liter will expand 1,200 cubic feet in a millisecond. So imagine them breaching a containment, or they say the water table is too far above it, right? That they're way below the water table. But it's burning, the whole site will burn at some point into a China syndrome, and that will suck the water down. A few hundred lousy fucking meters above it. You think that's really going to stop 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures? Give you a head shake. When it falls off, give it a freaking kick. The despicable, disgusting, revolting, parasitic Nuclear Waste Management Organization has proposed building a big hole in the ground where the highly radioactive material contained behind multiple barriers, including the stupidest one, it always irks me, that one right there, the copper cast. Let me see if I can find that story from Wade. That was their scientist, right? Because I don't want to get it wrong because they'll blow it off. Oh, well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He said this, but it actually was that. They'll use some little slip of the tongue because that's all they're good at. They're just good at being scum, right? And if they're not, they can call in 709-589-4406. A snake oil salesman is what they are. And they particularly hate the natives, I notice. Worldwide, we see the same thing where they throw a few $1 million at the natives. The natives are desperate. They take the money and they sign away the future and their health at the same time, their current health, and their future generations. Permanently destroy the future. sucked in and they got tons of money to throw around. You know, they got $26 billion sitting in a bank account, growing interest. You got any idea how much money they can spend every day and it means nothing to them? Pay attention for a second. Let me see if I can find that story about. I know roughly where it's to. Well, I should be close to it now. I can't win them all. We see it all the time, and when you want it, you can't remember exactly where it's to. Oh well, maybe I can't find it. Maybe time's cut up. My brain is now flashed. Not very good at giving up, unfortunately. Just hang on. Let me see if I can find it, because it's kind of important. Because what they're saying is the copper cast can last 1 million years. It's a crazy statement imaginable, by the way. They got no way of quantifying that assertion because they don't have a 1 million year legacy to look back on, for starters. I can find everything but that. Because I've been at this for so long, I have such a large pile, right? Let me try one more time. We're almost there. If I run into a certain thing, then I know is that I'm never going to find it. Oh. I can find all the other scumbags, but I can't find those two scientists from Nuclear Waste Management Organization that I specifically put in the spot so I could find it. But over the years, that spot got bigger and bigger. Oh. Well. What do we got here? Yipper. Just so happens. Copper caskets, they told you. That's these guys right here. Dr. Death and Mrs. Dr. Death. Confidence in copper coating. If it's from Nuclear International, Nuclear Engineering International, you throw it away right away. Go to the big screen, the big shut screen. A research review by Canada's Nuclear Waste Management Organization that's got $26 billion and done no managing at all for 18 years, found that the copper coating undergoes little corrosion, can maintain its role in containment of nuclear fuel. Like we're talking about fuel rods. That the neutron bombardment destroys the integrity of a nuclear site, 90% of the nuclear sites, which are like cities. But it's not, like, it doesn't care if it's copper, titanium, or whatever. It's going to destroy the integrity of it. That's how it works. Look at them. Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde. And findings confirm that the copper coating on the Nuclear Waste Management Organization designed containers for used nuclear fuel is robust and thick enough to withstand any corrosive effects for over 1 million years. Good God, man, have you lost your marbles? Because, like, if copper had that particular attribute, they would use it on all the casts a long time ago. These whack jobs are not the first one to look at copper, I can assure you. Like, it's ludicrous to suggest, but it gets worse. What's the thickness of this copper? Wait till you see that. That's always kind of special stupid. 3 millimeter copper coating. 0.25 millimeters of corrosion over 1 million years from 3 millimeter copper coating. Like, these are maniacs. Like, you got to be some special kind of evil to make that statement. You crossed every line that I know of. And I'm pretty sure that she designed it. Oh, they're going to put, don't worry, Dana, they're going to put the bentonite clay. Why do you need the bentonite clay layers of concrete if the copper cast is not going to break down for 1,000,000 years? And finally, get a site out of mind. You won't be here to criticize when it all goes to shit in the near future, see? He said, we know that the system protection does work. No, you don't. You got no proof of that. You haven't buried any of these copper containers with nuclear fuel rods in it and then came back later to see how it played out for you, have you? You disgusting parasites. And not likely ever to occur on that deep underground. The problem with that statement is, of course, is that when it melts down, it doesn't need oxygen. It burns at over 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And that'll just consume everything above it over endlessly. And next thing you know, the water's infiltrated, that detonates, like Fukushima, like Mayak, like Windscale, like Chernobyl. An engineering professor at McMaster University, well, there you go. There goes his credibility. He's a professor. That's the very last person you're going to be trusting if you're smart. You want to keep the fuel safe, and these canisters from corroding because of environmental impacts. The best way is to put something somewhere where you are below the water table. It doesn't matter that it's below the water table. 900 feet below Lake Huron, one of the biggest aquifers on the planet on top of that. How long do you think it's going to take 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures? And, that whole cavern, once it starts melting, everything's going to melt. That's just the way it is. You can't leave it uncontained. You have 5.5 million assemblies, not just fuel rods, but assemblies. That's 5.5 million possibilities of one of them igniting. And how many does it take to set off the rest of them? Oh, that's right, just one. How long will it take it to eat through 900 feet of ground? Not very long. Why would you do it, though? Because the nuclear industry is only good at one thing. Just stupid. Once construction of the facility is complete, you got $26 billion for 18 years, and you haven't even tried to build something yet. Just devoid. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which has managed nothing for its entire legacy, I might add, has said some 30,000 transport trucks of nuclear waste would begin moving for over 138 years from 8 interim storage facilities. These are the nuclear sites themselves they're talking about. Oh, they're interim storage facilities. They're disease factories hemorrhaging into the farmlands they're surrounded by. From Manitoba to New Brunswick to Ontario dump site through some of Canada's most densely populated areas. I've done an entire presentation, 3-hour presentation on the CANDU reactors last year or the year before or the year before that or what is it? Last year I think it was. And I covered, for 3 hours, academic studies, I covered the CANDU reactors. But here's a little insight to the CANDU reactors. There you go. The New Brunswick plant that they're quoting, which just signed a memorandum of understandings with South Korea for small modular reactors that don't even exist. And anything a small modular reactor can do, geothermal can do it 100 times better and 100 times sooner. Canada, Point Lepereur, was 16,400,000 trillion atoms a year legally allowed to be hemorrhaged into the ecosystem. The scale is, it's more than Europe and the rest of Canada combined just from a single reactor. And they're only talking about the tritium-3H. And they refuse to even call it tritium-3H on top of that. Luxac said Canada's nuclear waste in some cases has been sitting in temporary storages for 80 years, and the risk of finding a permanent place to entomb it is far greater than leaving it where it is. the RG Ginna nuclear power plant full sounding siren test scheduled for May the 7th. On a 4-minute duration of 96 sirens will sound in a 10-mile radius for a 4-minute duration. 4 minutes. Now, if they actually have a nuclear meltdown, they're never going to use the sirens. Everybody knows that, right? Is my stream okay? Because it's looking funny on my end. I think it looks okay. I'll just look at the comments here and see if anybody's saying anything about the stream. Additional single siren, whether it's streaming good or not, single siren test may be conducted throughout the day. So they got 96 sirens. I'll bring up that anyway. Should nuclear power plants be renamed massive disease factories? Oh, we got 13 people. That's crazy. How do you get that many on my show? I'm too nervous now. We have 14 likes, 18 votes. Like the censorship, they got no one to pick on, right? And they just love being evil. That's their nature, I guess. But the stream is looking good now. Excellent connection. Let's keep going. It was a little bit iffy a few minutes ago. Keep it rolling. I wasn't going to do a show tonight, and I realized, if I don't do a show, then the industry gets a day off, extra that it shouldn't get off. And then how do I sleep knowing that, see? So it's located on the southern shore of Lake Ontario in Ontario, Canada, and New York, about 20 miles northeast of Rochester. That's despicable, these nuclear plants on the freshwater aquifers. It really is a despicable industry, isn't it? Speaking of despicable, English nuclear waste vote concludes 5 days later. The ballot asked for each voter's position on a township continue to participate as a potential host community for a deep geological nuclear China syndrome machine. And this is Chile, with Chile Incorporation. And she was saying how they knocked down every door in the community, but they let people vote online, including children. The 5-day community vote, 5 days. They've been there for 12 years. 12 years, throwing money around, having a party for themselves. 12 years, they've done nothing. Shouldn't they be fired? The 5-day community vote on whether to proceed as potential host for the nuclear waste. And it's going to be, like, say they accept it, it'll be another 10 years before they even turn over a shovel full of the farmland soil they're going to build it in. You want the farms to keep working. Very important the farms keep working. What an evil, despicable, hateful industry it turns out to be. Hundreds of residents voted in person and online. Why would they have to vote online in something so important? So you got 6,000 people, you got a couple of hundred voted in person, the rest of the votes can be manipulated, can't they? Are they going to put up a list of what everybody voted? No. So they can be manipulated, can't they? And after 12 years of not doing a single thing, spending tens of millions of dollars in those communities, sitting on $26 billion for 18 years, you still haven't done a single thing. You really think that's not above them to do a little manipulation digitally because everything was done online? I voted, said the retired welder. The proposed repository would yield great economic benefits to Ignace and the surrounding areas. Yeah, you should buy shares in healthcare because that's going to go through the roof with all the isotopes going to release into the community. Why would you have children voting, though? You despicable pieces of scum. They really are scum, aren't they? Because they want the children to work there too, see? Oh, you don't need to get you don't need to get an education. You can come to work for us. We'll teach you. Ed Synak said he voted no because I don't have a lot of faith in the current science. Way to go, Ed. I think they should leave it as it is until they have a solution. Yes, indeed. People have been bought off by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which has never managed anything. Got $28 billion, $26 billion, 18 years. 18 years they haven't come up with a solution. And because you divided the community so much, if they have a referendum, you know it's going to go no. They're going to drag that as long as they can. And then, it takes another 5 years to find a spot. Then it's another 10 years to go through the whole process again. 12, 14 years. What are you doing with the $26 billion, you disgusting maggots? Referring to the industry's-backed Nuclear Waste Management Organization, which doesn't manage anything. They got no history of managing a bloody thing, do they? Except for the interest. They managed to hide that away for 18 years. Ed's wife said there was many reasons for her no vote. The primary reason is it's nuclear waste, not candy, she said. Way to go. Nice one. And the area's natural environment needs to be protected. Way to go. Great call. Kevin Gould said he said yes side, in part because we have to deal with the nuclear waste seriously. Well, putting it down in a hole in the ground, walking away from it, and waiting for it to go pop. As dealing with it, is it? But none of them articulated why you got to deal with it. Because it's splitting atoms. And because it's splitting atoms, then your highways are going to be populated with those atoms. Your community is going to get the biggest dose for 138 years, and your farm food. So don't be eating anything there. If you live there, don't eat anything from the farms if they do it there. You got any idea how friggin' evil this industry actually is? Results will factor into a consultant's report. A consultant's report, really. Becca said her team knocked on doors at every address in Ignace. Stalkers, eh? The Nuclear Waste Management Organization said it chose between the two sites by year end, but first it needs to know it has a willing host community. There's no other nuclear that you'll see a referendum. That's the only thing you'll see a referendum on is the nuclear dump. And they all say the same thing. It's got to be the community has to want it there. Otherwise, we got to go look somewhere else. Right? So they're playing a game, right? They do this worldwide, the same game. We've covered it. But first it needs to know it has a willing host community. And after the willingness committee considers, the willingness committee, I don't, all the years I've been doing nuclear, 22 years or something, I've never heard that framed that way before. And the South Bruce site is on traditional territory of Ojibwa Nation, the native communities, and they love poisoning the natives' land. They excel in destroying the native communities' DNA and genetics and their holy grounds and everything else, right? Nuclear Waste Management in response to Land Defense Alliance protests. I sent a bunch of emails today. I never got no replies, of course. Vince Polka, this is an interesting story. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization Regional Communication Management attempts to dispel concerns surrounding the Deep Geological Repository project. To dispel concerns. You got a nice brick office. They got their websites all plastered and their logos everywhere. For 12 years, they've been up there just torturing everybody. In an interview with Dougal Media, Chief Turtle said that the Land Defense Alliance has reached out to the Nuclear Waste Management Organization to speak with them about the project, but the Nuclear Waste Management Organization has a scheduling conflict which prevented them from attending a meeting. There's zero possibility they couldn't have sacrificed somebody for the meeting. We had invited the Nuclear Waste Management to come and sit with us, but they didn't show up. They've been begging for a meeting, and now they don't show up when they're invited. Vince Polka, the Regional Communication Management, who, of course, his job is to trick and manipulate and deceive the population, right? And he does that really quite well in this story. Wait till you get to it. Said the organization was aware of the protest. However, they were attending the final day of the willingness process. Isn't this a morbid way to frame that narrative? Isn't this like the final day of the willingness process in Ignace? We think we got them now. No one has ever been harmed in Canada or around the world by using nuclear fuel. So shut up. Like these are maniacs. Nobody except for everybody on the planet. There was 865,000 extra cancers in Japan in the first year. They stopped releasing these numbers after 2012. Nobody knows why. Not everybody got health care, by the way. Not everybody was diagnosed. To suggest that nobody's ever been harmed in Canada or around the world by the used fuel, the fuel is put in pools. The pools have no containment, and they're hemorrhaging radiation. They're splitting atoms into the ecosystem 24 hours a day. So for Ponka to say something like that is unconscionable. It's not that he doesn't know the difference. It's just that he's a monster, right? He's a real-life monster. Even though used nuclear fuel is classified as dangerous goods, along with many other things on the road, like really, you can't conflate nuclear with other things that are on the highway, you disgusting parasite. He said it's much safer than a lot of goods that are already transported on the highways. It gets better though. He said the benefit of dealing with uranium is because it's solid, so it's very easy to find. Like, what are you talking about, man? It's gone through a chain reaction. It's very fragile. If you did spill it on the road, it's going to crack open. And that, there's lots of stories out there. Like, there was a story last year of where Australia had lost this little speck of cesium-137, this little tiny container. It's the size, half the size of your pinky. And the people driving past it on the highway at 60 miles per hour got the same dose as multiple x-rays, they were saying. At 60 miles per hour driving past it. It's incredibly harmful, incredible small amount for incredible long periods of time. If you have an accident, then the zirconium cladding, the minute it's exposed to air, it's going to catch fire. And once it catches fire, of course, it's going to burn it. The zirconium claddings will burn at 1800 degrees. They'll set the plutonium, uranium pellets on fire, and they'll burn at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. There's no picking it up. It's very easy to collect. You can't collect. It's not easy. You have a nuclear accident. It's not easy to collect. You're a disgusting piece of shit, man. You despicable piece of shit, Vince. Is it Vince? Where is he to, that scumbag himself? Yeah, Vince Polka. Well, it's pretty easy. We can just pick it up. We don't even have to wear gloves, Dana. We can just wear aprons. We can pick it up, put it back in the container. And put it back in the container. It's the craziest statement I've ever heard from an expert. It's easy to find, yeah, because your Geiger counter will say turn around and run. It's very easy to collect, which is not. It's pyrophoric in the sense of, as it's going through the air, when it breaks open, it'll start catching fire. It'll burn it. The zirconium claddings, which is very toxic, by the way, will ignite the plutonium and uranium. You'll have a China syndrome on your highway. Like to say it's easy to collect, like I can't even wrap my mind around the statement, and put it back into a container and be on our way. Oh man, these guys are monsters. You actually got to be like a monster to say the things he's saying. And he says, unlike, I don't even know how to respond to him outside of, I would like to meet him in person so I can give him what for. This Vince Polk is a monster. That's a monster to suggest it's easy to find, you can pick it up, put it back in the containers. Is there anybody out there who believes that? Is there anybody on the planet? I mean, my God, boy. He's just a little bit evil, or he's just a little bit... I don't see he has a redeeming quality in his body. Hang on here, I gotta put that up where I can find it again. Because we knows we're gonna run into Vince again, right? People like that don't usually go away. They knocked on every door. Hang on here. Nobody's ever been harmed by nuclear around the world. Except for endless people. The benefit of dealing with uranium is because it's solid, it's easy to find, it's easy to collect and put it back in the container, which means you're talking about it coming out of the containers. It's going to catch fire immediately. It'll burn at 1800 degrees. You're not going to put it back in no containers. You're not putting the genie back in that fucking bottle, I can tell you that much. You disgusting parasite, Vince. His mother once said that he was the most heartless person she'd ever known. Vince was the type of guy that would... while his friends were taking the wings off of flies, he was pulling the legs off kittens. The regional communication manager with the non-waste management organization, an actual demon, that's a demon would say something like that. Oh, it's easy. We could pick up the fuel rods. And when that one drops, the next guy run and pick up the fuel rod. When he drops dead, the next guy run and pick up the fuel rod. So what Vince is going to line everybody up. He said, when the man ahead of you drops dead, you run in, grab the fuel rod, and you pick up and run for the container. And when he drops dead, the next man run in and grab that fuel rod. The radiation doesn't stay behind once you remove it. What are you talking about, man? Have you seen what they done to Fukushima, for God's sakes? They picked up 30 million one-ton bags on just 3% of the land. The food was banned by 55 countries for a decade, and they just replaced everybody. Like, it's hard to comprehend 30 million one-ton bags. Let's say the highway, the radiation doesn't stay behind once you remove it. Unlike, say, an oil spill or a gas spill. Very difficult to get that material back again, says Panka. I don't even know what to say outside of you're a despicable piece of shit, Vince. You're a worthless human, man. Argentina budget cuts hitting nuclear energy ambitions, the atomic body. And what do you see in the fucking background back there? Don't tell me that's a farmland. Wait a sec, let me zoom in on it. Oh shit, I think that's farmland. Imagine that. Quite a coincidence, is it? Oh, this is where they're building the first small modular reactor project. Advanced stage of construction in Lima, on the outskirts of Buenos Aires, Argentina, where there's no corrupt officials anywhere to be found for 20 feet, I guess, is it? Oh, so they don't have any money to finish the job. It's because they don't even have a license. They can't build a small modular reactor without a license. They don't have a license into the regulatory agencies to build a small modular reactor, so what are they talking about? Like, they're hitting the nuclear energy ambitions. New Brunswick Power signs a small modular reactor agreement with South Korea's nuclear operator. La 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 la. I was once a madman, said Vince Polka. Let me see if I can find a picture of Vince Polka, because I think that would be fascinating. Just bear with me, let's see if we can find it. Vince Polka. I just want to see what a scumbag looks like. How do you spell his last Ponka? Yeah, that's right. I gotta see what this shit face looks like. Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Bring it on home, baby. Images. Vince Polka, Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Is that him there? There's Vince right there. Look at that. Oh, that's Vince right there. Look. Man. Man, oh man, oh man. Well, that's Nuclear Waste Management Organization's newswatch.com. There's the little demon right there. Look. His mommy said he always knew he was going to grow up to be a massive serial killer. And Vince, right, so somebody gave him a model of it. Now he's convinced that you can pick it up and play football with it. That's the Canadian fuel rods assemblies. And I'm not sure how many fuel rods are in that assembly, but like if that was actually went through a chain reaction, you're not getting in the building without dropping dead immediately for at least 1 million years. If you took that and you took the Toronto subway and put it in the wall, everybody who walks past it will die that day for 1 million years. But there's the scumbag, degenerate monster right there, look. Vince the shit fucking face Polka. The monster. The monster. Anyway, let's keep going here. Vince the monster. Well, that was rewarding. I feel better now. At least we've seen a real life monster. What else we got for them? New Brunswick signs a small modular reactor agreement with South Korea. Yeah, but South Korea doesn't have small modular reactors. Well, Indigenous leaders, we covered that last night, from New Brunswick are raising concerns about nuclear waste. New Brunswick goes ahead and just signs a memorandum of understanding to a trilateral agreement including one of the world's largest nuclear operators. First off, there's not very many nuclear operators worldwide. And South Korea's previous administration was phasing it out. The current administration is promoting nuclear. The next administration might phase it out too, see? That's what we've seen back and forth now. None of the three CEOs, including Laurie Clark, good old Laurie, and Bill from ARC, were available for an interview. And ARC, of course, is the mixed oxide fuel. here in Canada. They're two British companies that have set up shop here. The agreement was signed at the Writers, really, Small Modular Reactors and Advanced Reactor 2024 conference in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, well, we'll have one over here. Bring one over to Canada. We got a disease factory there that's starting to wind down. New Brunswick Power is planning to add an ARC 100 small modular reactors that you don't have a license for. Like, you got to put the license in to the regulatory agency, which is 1 million pieces of paper. They're going to hire 300 or 400 people to go through that 1 million pieces of paper, and you're going to find all these flaws. You're going to submit it back to the company. They're going to submit it back to the engineers. They're going to re-engineer it. You're talking about 4 or 5 years to go through all that paperwork. And 10, 12, 14 years down the road, when you finally got a design everybody can work with, then they might get a license. Now, once you get the license, that's not the end of it there. They got to build it on an experimental site, which obviously is going to be Chalk River. Then they got to run it for several years, find the kinks in it, and redesign it, put it through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's process again, where they're going to scrutinize it for a couple of years straight. And then they're going to make modifications. They're going to have to rebuild it, get the kinks out of that system. You're 25, 30 years down the road. They're not going to have anything there's no small modular reactors by 2030. In the next 6 years, it's ludicrous to suggest that. You don't even have a license into the applications. How are you quantifying that assertion? The New Brunswick has a goal stated in their 12-year energy plan to add 600 megawatts of mixed oxide fuel, which is illegal in Canada, I might add, production to the provincial grid by 2035. But you don't have any small modular reactors, and geothermal can fill in that gap right away. Why wouldn't you do that? And you can have 3 times more megawatts for the same price in just a couple of years. Go ahead and start building it this week. You don't need any special contractors. You don't have to poison everybody within 5,000 square miles for 1 million years. New Brunswick Power and ARC Canada have touted small modular reactors as carbon-free energy. They're the most resource-intensive thing in human history. Every nuclear power plant needs its own gas, oil, and coal plant dedicated to it. They can't run on their own power. It's just the nuclear industry in Canada is just disgusting. It really is. Nuclear Waste Management Organization, how could you expect any difference? I wonder who Vince really is, right? Polka. Announcing other small modular reactor agreements with Saskatchewan and 7 New Brunswick First Nations. I don't know of a single New Brunswick First Nations that said they want a nuclear reactor in their community or anywhere around them. On Tuesday, Green Party leader Elizabeth May countered claims about small modular reactors being a climate change solution in a Parliament Hill news conference. And small modular reactors don't decrease the nuclear waste, they increase it. There's 35 times more intermediate level waste, 30 times more high level waste, and 5 times more fuel rods when you scale it up to the conventional reactors. And not only that, the waste stream from the mixed oxide, the plutonium mixed oxide fuel production, and the fuel they're talking about using is plutonium mixed oxide fuel high assay, 15% or something, weapons grade, military grade, in order to get some power, extra power out of these disease factories, and that you can't contain the emissions of these things. And not only that, when you take the fuel out, we don't know what to do with mixed oxide fuel. It's unbelievable how many atoms it produces every day in the fuel pools that are hemorrhaging into your communities. But the industry got $26 billion, so they can spin it. They got money to throw around to convince people to jump on the bandwagon. It's really something. What do I got? I got 17 viewers. Bless your hearts. Oh, I got 15 likes. Wow. For the last half an hour, 15 likes. I got 19 votes. Should nuclear power plants be renamed massive disease factories or death atoms extermination machines? Because that's what fuel is. It's a death atom extermination machine, right? So they got everything on their side. They got everything going for them. They got all the money. They got $26 billion. And they haven't got not a single grain of truth in anything they say on top of that. This is Europe, I think it is. Don't quote me, though. Negotiators unveil a text of nuclear energy deal. Senators on Wednesday released a text of a highly anticipated nuclear energy package they hope will be supercharged American nuclear industry and paved the way for the next generation of reactors. But there is no next generation of reactors. Like, what are you talking about? Geothermal can replace everything. Like, let me show you the evidence, actually. How about that? There is no nuclear renaissance, right? Let me show you that. What have I got here? Yeah, renewables. Nuclear went backwards last year. This story is from January, the end of January. Yeah, January 21st of this year. Nuclear goes backwards again as solar and wind enjoys a year record growth. Nuclear went backwards 1.7 gigawatt capacity, which is equal to 2 large nuclear reactors. And how many small ones? Oh, that's right, there is no small ones. Whereas renewables was 507 gigawatts, which is 570 large reactors in 12 months of just renewables. But see, you would use geothermal and then back it up for peak power with storage and wind and solar. And you're still going to only spend half the money for the same gigawatts. So why would you even consider nuclear despicable, disgusting, parasitic nuclear? The vulture industry that makes everybody sick and destroys the ecosystem. Why bother? This is Ed Dunhill commenting on the Ignace Nuclear Waste Management Organization propaganda material. Transportation and storage continue to be a major issue with nuclear waste. Well, according to Vince Polka, they can just use dustpans and a broom and scrape it up and throw it back in the container and head on back, keep on the road, right? This is craziness, of course. The minute it's exposed to air, it catches fire. If residents in Ignace need more education, should reflect on the effects of other people's health and safety and their constitutional rights, more so than the Nuclear Waste Management Organization's perpetual propaganda. I tried to sign up to the page. I tried to contact them, and I couldn't do any of it. Kept giving me blank pages, wouldn't let me sign up. Total coincidence, I'm sure. After reading an article published in Nuclear Waste Organization's Newswatch about Ignace voting on the potential nuclear waste facility, I'm surprised just how much education is needed after 14 years of consultations with the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. 14 years, $26 billion, you still haven't done a single thing. Isn't it time to fire all of these people? And jail them for embezzlement. They didn't spend the money the way they were supposed to. And where's the interest on the $26 billion? How come we don't see that accrued? Obviously, they're stealing it, right? The constitutional rights of the people who do live in Ignace are abandoned by not being allowed to vote on this issue. You're surprised just how much education is needed. Our Charter of Rights and Freedom in Canada, emphasis on the fundamental freedom, Section 2B, freedom of thought and belief and opinion and expression, and they gave me gag orders for 3.5 years. I said, no, you can go see a provincial court judge and you can submit what you want to think or believe and or your opinions or expressions, and we'll see if that's okay. And including freedom of the press and other media of communication. We have freedom to lie and slaughter and poison. And life, liberty, and security of people gives privileges to every permanent resident in Canada. Except for me. When you look at the censorship that got done to me, obviously I don't have any freedom. The residents of Ignace have been given privilege to put non-residents in harm's way, put all Canadians in harm's way. As stated above, contraventions are found at SS.2b and 7 with respect to not being able to express one's opinion by expression of a vote, especially if there's a potential to harm one's health and safety, that's exactly what we're talking about. And if the residents of Ignace need more education, should reflect on the effects of other people's health and the safety and their constitutional rights, their Bill of Rights, more so than the Nuclear Waste Management Organization perpetual propaganda, like Vince Polka saying that they could just pick up the radiation, put it back in a container, and get on their way again. The craziest friggin' statement I've ever heard. The most dishonest lie I've ever heard. I've never ever heard anybody else, and I heard them all, I thought, till Vince showed up. Residents of Ignace should also keep in mind about the interaction of our provincial and federal governments who fail to protect the safety of all residents living near the proposed transportation routes of this toxic waste by not allowing non-residents to vote on the issue. Everybody should be voting on it in Canada. You're going to have a referendum, it should be Canadian-wide, shouldn't it? Shouldn't it? We're all going to be impacted by it. And we covered this story actually earlier. Nuclear waste vote concludes. She's like, I got paid, so that's all that matters to me. The rest of you can fuck right off. Thank you. See you later, suckers. You got $20 million to make it look official, and we covered some of the apologists that they rolled out, right? And here's the vote. Here's what you would have voted on. The first one was yes, I'm an idiot, and I want the township to continue participating in poisoning our communities for 1 million years. Next one was no, I want the township to stop participating in the process and opt out as a potential disease factory. And the last one, the stupidest one imaginable, was I abstain. I am indifferent about participating in the process as a potential host community. So why are you having a mock vote for it? Because that's what this is. This is a mock vote. Because they got $26 billion. They can do whatever they fucking want, do you know? They're scumbags. That's just the way it was when you're talking about scumbags with that much money. They had $26 billion for 18 years. No interest whatsoever in 18 years. It's still $26 billion. And they still come up with no solutions. They haven't managed anything, not a single fucking thing. The 5-day community propaganda vote. That's what that was. Urano Canada celebrates successful reclamation of Cuff Lake Mine with investments in the future of nuclear in Saskatchewan. Well, Cuff Lake is where they had a massive mine. They don't show you pictures, of course, because that don't make any sense. But they have tailing ponds where that pond there is chemicals, right? And that's evaporated into the community for its entire legacy. And yet they say there's no environmental impacts there. They cleaned up everything. You can't clean it up. And we're only talking mining. You still can't clean that up. You know, it's surrounded by fresh water in every direction. Is nuclear power more risky than renewables? Oh, we got Dr. Sama. The World Nuclear Association's Director General, Sama. She's quite the arsehole, isn't she? We take it to lower her lies. And we only cover nuclear lies. We'll do a 24-hour news cycle a lot of times. And the only stories we're going to cover is if they lie. And the problem is you can't keep up with it because every story is going to be full of lies. Every paragraph, every sentence, multiple lies in a typical paragraph. And it's perpetual. It's the only perpetual machines I know is nuclear. The splitting of the atoms is a perpetual machine, right? The fuel rods are splitting atoms. That's an actual perpetual disease factory. And Sama, the monster, the sadistic demon itself, she said, it's no secret that the nuclear powers suffer from a bad reputation regarding everything, not just safety, cost, and length of time to take to bring projects to fruition, but do nuclear power projects pose a greater risk than the renewable counterparts? Well, of course they do. Solar doesn't poison the air, land, water, the ecosystem, the biosphere, the oceans for 1 billion years. It doesn't pulse energy at the speed of light every second. What a cunt, I think is the only word you can really use for her. She said nuclear is no more or less risky than any other clean energy technology. Well, nuclear is not clean energy at all. There's nothing clean about nuclear. My goodness. Luckily for nuclear, the way nuclear is perceived and understood has radically changed in the last 3.5 years. And that's a really interesting statement, isn't it? Because we seen this 3.5 years ago where they showed up at COPS 27 or 26, was it? And it was the first time we ever seen it promoted at the conference of parties, the constipated parties. I don't know that it's true that nuclear is more lengthy or more costly than other green. Nuclear is not green. It's got nothing to do with green technology. It's the furthest thing. In fact, if you look at history, the fastest decarbonization has been achieved with nuclear energy, which is a complete fable. It's a complete fabrication. First off, if you got no carbon, we look like the moon. And nuclear gas, oil, and coal produces carbon, which is more plants, more trees, more insects, more birds, more magic. But nuclear produces atoms that are anthropogenic or man-made, that nothing on the body has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. This is why we call them disease factories, death atoms. And when the atom gets in your body, or the birds, or your children, or an insect, or anything else, their bodies attack it for the rest of their lives with white blood cells that build a sarcophagus around it. You call it a tumor, right? But what that does is it compromises your immune system because you're producing all these white blood cells for the rest of your life. And as you bioaccumulate more and more and more, what a piece of shit. Every friggin' time we see this industry, they're scumbags. She said nuclear is facing similar strugglers, which is what in the World Nuclear Association, and they've got thousands of articles a year and never put a single name on a single article. They got nothing to hide. Why are they hiding? And the Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation formed a Net Zero Nuclear Initiative at Constipated Parties 28, Conference of Parties 28 last year. They took over. They didn't form it. This was the UN, which is, George Bush calls them the New World Order, right? 195 countries. That's the New World Order. Let me play that clip of George Bush, because I always find that fascinating. He's not the only one. Let's give Georgie a little...
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Sadistic demon. The UN, right, is a military-industrial complex. This is what Eisenhower called them. He calls them New World Order. That's 195 militaries. They're unelected. And they've taken over the entire planet. The United Nations has subsidy companies that control every facet of everybody's life, schools, universities, hospitals. They have infiltrated everything. But they're actually the League of Nations, right? Before Fukushima, or before Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were called the League of Nations. They're the same organization, and it's an organization, they're the weapons producers, right? This story is a crazy story. Contaminated soil piles up in vast Fukushima cleanup project. I'm not sure, I think this was 2000 and, I might have it there actually, 2022. So there are still some areas off limit due to the radiation levels in Japan. Not some areas, huge, vast tracts and communities and everything else. Yeah, March the 18th, 2022. The Japanese government has spent more than $43 billion in decontamination efforts. Well, according to Vince Polka, that's not true. You can just pick it up, put it back in the bucket, and put a plug in the hole in the bucket, and you haven't got a hole in the bucket. The bucket. So $43 billion cleaning up 3% of the land. They didn't clean it up. They scratched up topsoil on 3% of the land, so that the first time it rains or the next time the wind blows, everything's recontaminated. Again, we've been covering it for the entire legacy. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Like it's hard to comprehend. Let me find a way to explain. Well, if you take one-ton bags, put it in the back of a one-ton pickup truck, that's 5 rows of traffic around the planet, bumper to bumper, of one-ton bags. It's hard to comprehend it, isn't it? You can build a road like this around the entire planet and make it twice as high with one-ton bags. If you picked up 20% of the prefecture. They only cleaned up 3% where they're going to move people back into and where they want them to grow radioactive food into. It's a complete deception, right? They picked up the topsoil, which is not cleaning up. You have to razz every building, every tree, every rock has to be taken and stored in a deep geological repository for millions of years. And you have to do that in 14 prefectures. So you need something like 300 trillion one-ton bags. But you got to dig down a lot deeper than 2 centimeters. The Japanese government has spent more than $43 billion. $43 billion. $43 billion picking up one-ton bags. $43 billion. Because, it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine, yeah? The contaminated soil and waste was piling up in residential areas. Piling up in residential areas. Like, it's not piling up in residential areas, it's piling up in the nuclear wasteland. It's not hindering reconstruction efforts. It's a nuclear wasteland, you disgusting parasite. So the government decided to build a temporary storage facility in Futaba and Akuma, which are both sides of the nuclear disease factory known as Fukushima. 1,600 acres, 5 times the size of New York. It's 14 million bags or something they put there, right? And so they had, each truck could carry 6 bags, I think it was, or 7 bags. It was 7,000 bags a day. 1,000 trucks each day at 7,000 bags of soil a day. 1,000 trucks, so 7,000 bags. Let's divide that into 30 million one-ton bags. Let's see what that looks like. Oh. So 30 million one-ton bags at 7,000 trucks a day. How many days will it take? So divide that by 7,000, right? And shouldn't be too long. Should a couple of days. They should have it all done. Or 4,285 days. So divide that by 365 days if you don't take a day off. That's 11 and a half years they can move all those bags. Now, what's the problem with that equation? Is the bags only meant to last 2 years. So you have to repackage everything every 2 years. Guess what you're not doing? You're not being very honest in the nuclear industry, are they? So 1,000 trucks a day for 11 and a half years. You can move your bags somewhere else. The government introduced a law requiring the soil to be moved out of the prefecture by 2045. Which is quite the interesting statement, isn't it? Going to move it out of the prefecture. What they done was they sawed the bags open out of grown food in the nuclear wasteland, right? In a bid to reduce the overall amount of nuclear waste, they're sorting through the material at the facility. Who is? The homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language? To separate what can be burned. So you're going to burn nuclear waste, liberate the isotopes back into the ecosystem because you can't destroy it. And it's hoped that some of the soil can be reused. What are you talking about? Oh, that's what you're talking about. Like, we've covered all this, folks. I'm just joking around. I wasn't supposed to do the show tonight, but I just can't sit there. I was gathering up these stories today. There's not much left to get through. We have promised the local government are going to dispose of the waste outside the prefecture by March 2045. Since it's required by law, we're going to fulfill the promise. Well, it was required by law that you don't poison everybody. You didn't fulfill that one, did you? High radiation zones remain. So they need another 300 million one-ton bags in just Fukushima. In the towns of Futaba, Kuma, the radiation levels are relatively high. They're incredibly high. They're right alongside of ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns, for goodness sakes. Something we've never seen before. And each of these reactors are 100 Chernobyls, for goodness sakes. Each at the top of the reactors were 8 reactor cores in 2 fuel pools. Each of them is equal to 100 Chernobyls. Because Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium reactors. Maybe a TEPCO should hire vents and they could just put everything, scoop it up with a broom and a dustpan. And full-scale decontamination work has not even begun in Futaba and Akuma, which is fenced off like many, many communities. A difficult to return zone. No, it's nuclear wasteland. It's easy to say it. Just try it with me there if you're with the nuclear industry. No, I know. I'm not going to put you through that torture. You don't know how to talk truth. The central local government are hoping they can attract the new victims to the area, to the nuclear wasteland, and are offering them $17,000 to anyone stupid enough, which is not going to cover your trips to the doctor for the rest of your life, is it? Radiation tied to 396 deaths at Idaho National Laboratory. That's a 2015 story, I think. I came across today. More than 15,000 workers have died from radiation poisoning, which Vince Polka said nobody's ever been hurt. Idaho National Laboratories is on one of the world's biggest aquifers, I might add. A lot of the stories I was trying to find today are gone, as usual. I found it over there. Food grown in sizable area to be studied for radiation. Well, let's look up Sizewell. Sizewell is surrounded by farms, like all nuclear plants worldwide. Just humor me, though. See if I can, because I think this is the second last story. Come on, bring me Sizewell. Chernobyl, Sizewell. That's not what we're looking for. Let me see what I got done here. Well, we've done pretty good, didn't we? We almost got a whole show in, for goodness sakes. We're at an hour and 30 minutes. My internal clock is all off here tonight. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that tonight. So I had to look for it, and I finally found it. But the regular site that I would have used, it's gone. Japan always does that, right? Food grown in Sizewell area to be studied for radiation. What do you got to study? It's right. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation 24 hours a day. They're going to pass out iodine pills and make everybody happy. Of course, the iodine pills are not going to protect you. The radiation is still going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, your bones, everywhere else. Well, at least you're not producing radioactive hormones, they say. Well, it's simply not true. Because all the gammas, not just iodine-131, are going to aggregate in your thyroid gland. And it's not going to be just gamma. You're going to get alphas, neutrons, and betas. So everything, all the food is going to be incredibly radioactive, but they're just going to use gamma, shitty gamma Geiger counters, and then quantify it. They'll say, oh no, well, it's not bad. The whole town's going to get anti-radiation pills. Like, I love those headlines when that's simply not true. These are not anti-radiation pills. And if you're going to give a whole town, that means you should move out of that town. If they're giving you iodine pills, iodate pills, move at least 100 miles away. Because they're going to hemorrhage radiation anyway. You can't, you get a new reactor, you put the fuel in it, it's contained, right? But 14 months later, you got to open the containment up and put the fuel in a fuel pool where it's still splitting atoms and evaporating that into the ecosystem on a scale that would terrify anybody with common sense. And what year was this? I think it was 2013. The entire population of town will be issued with standby. A standby supply of anti-radiation pills. There's no such thing as a rat-away pill, you know? Like, what are you talking about? Like, they admit that it doesn't protect you, just your thyroid eventually, right? But the average person doesn't have the attention span to read past the headline, let alone anywhere else. They scan down to the first sentence, they see standby supplies of anti-radiation pills, and they're like, hey, honey, nothing to worry about. We're going to get some pills. And they'll roll up people like her. Oh, hi, we're here from the Nuclear Waste Management Organization to bring you prosperity and death and diseases and illnesses. So I just done the whole show, and I got 16 people the whole time. Well, not the whole time. When I finally got to 16, I just sat there at 16. Because this is a touchy subject in Canada. They don't want this video going anywhere. So people look at it, oh, he got no views. I'm not watching that. Because the average person doesn't understand. They don't understand what information is, right? They'll get most of the people get their information off Simpsons or Spider-Man or the Hulk or something, right? They don't understand the danger, the enormity, the gravity, the heartaches from being poisoned, the incredible torture of trying to help your loved ones who have been poisoned. It's a complete disconnect, right? Let me get back out this. I guess that's it for us tonight. Let's get a little bit of music up. I guess we'll call it a night. What are we going to play tonight? Night Sympathy. Gotta watch the volume because I can't remember. Let's close down the poll, I suppose. How about that? Should nuclear power plants be renamed massive disease factories? And death atoms, extermination machines. Yeah. And you notice last night I used the word death atoms too, right? Because I think that's the best way to describe these things is death atoms. And we had a wonderful 20 people. You know, I've been doing this show for how long? For how long? Never mind. Don't answer that question. I don't want to be reminded. I apologize for not being on time tonight. And I see James has donated. James, my hero, buddy. Thank you. Bless your heart, my friend. Brian S. I'm going to do a quick shout out. Dana Nasana. I love Dana Nasana, by the way. He's a wonderful person, man. Been around for a long time. And he doesn't need to be a moderator. I stuck that on him. Just to show a little bit of respect his way. Blue Jay Outpost. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. John Curtis. James Lucis was busy in the comments. Washed up zinc fire blonde. That's Sama. The World Nuclear Association's blonde zinc fire blondie or something. It's fucking funny. Brody Love. Good night, everybody. John Curtis, I said. I know I've seen Colette there. I know Stephen Young is out there somewhere. And hopefully now, over the next couple of weeks, we see a big difference in Stephen Young. I know we're not going to see a big difference, but he's not going to get any more infusions for the next month or something. Hopefully, we see some results on his side. Savannah's Fort, Kevin Blanche, and Colette. I know I've seen Colette there, that's right. Did I miss anybody? Yeah, Dana's Nisana's been around a long time, man. Thick and thin too, buddy. Bless his heart. Okay, well, I guess, because you know me, I'll start mumbling, and I'll be happy to mumble for the next hour. I'm not going to do that to you. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody. Unless there's a major event happening, we'll see everybody on Sunday's regular show. We'll have more of this Canadian nightmare. I'll have some better pictures of Vince, hopefully, by then. Vince Polka. He's not getting off this easy. And take a big fucking shit on him. We're going to dress him up with some green screen shit for Sunday night show. We'll put that out there on separate blogs so that his loved ones can find it. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care, everyone.